Pipe weapons are the famous, and arguably infamous, weapon category created by Bethesda for Fallout 4. Pipe weapons are crude, low-tech, low-requirement, and lightweight, but they get the job done, especially for lower levels. Pipe weapons are widely available across the Commonwealth, so it's most likely one of the first weapons you've come across during your playthrough. The first time I picked up a pipe weapon, I thought to myself, this thing looks like a piece of junk. And while my original assumption isn't far off from the truth, which I would like to talk about more in a few minutes, I immediately thought that it was a nice touch by Bethesda to add more weapons into the Fallout games, especially something that seemed to look like it was handmade in the wasteland after a nuclear war. What I did know at the time, however, is how deep the pipe weapon customization system goes, or the lore and implications surrounding pipe weapons that was added by Bethesda. So, I want to begin by talking about a general background for the pipe weapons inside of Fallout 4 from a gameplay perspective, their purpose inside of the game, and their feasibility inside of the lore, before briefly discussing the actual mechanics when it comes to the pipe weapons. To begin to provide context about how pipe weapons became what they are today, I need to go back in time and talk a little bit about the development of Fallout 4. The previous 3D Fallout games were created with the Gamebryo game engine, which, while a great resource for the times, admittedly, it has its flaws, especially when it comes to gunplay. Fallout 3's gunplay, for example, wasn't really suited for what we would consider to be a good first-person shooter experience, especially compared to today's standards. There was no way to aim down sights, the movement felt sluggish, the bullet path was almost visible and completely unpredictable, there was little to no reaction from enemies, and the guns felt like you were shooting paintballs at the enemy. The footage you're seeing currently is from my Fallout 3 playthrough, which is heavily modified. But trust me, it was a lot worse on vanilla. This was actually so notorious in the Fallout community that Fallout 3 gained the nickname Oblivion with Guns, which is a horrible title to have if you're attempting to make a post-nuclear survival game based in the United States. The Gamebryo engine was a little outdated, even at the time of Fallout 3's creation. Fallout New Vegas used the same engine, which the developers attempted to modify to make the gunplay better. While there was some improvement, such as natively adding the option to aim down sights, it was obvious that Bethesda needed a solution for their next Fallout game. Bethesda, also not wanting to make the same mistake they did in Fallout 3, reached over to their partners at id Software, who have a lot of experience with gunplay from creating the Doom series of games. id Software helped Bethesda make this engine the best it can be for a new Fallout game. And this new game engine, called the Creation Engine, was the one that eventually made Fallout 4. And with these new series of developments in the engine, the developers of Fallout 4 really wanted to expand the overall designs and feelings for the weapons inside of the game to feel a little more distant and post-apocalyptic. A lot of the weapons were redesigned, some new ideas were added, and this is exactly where pipe weapons come into play. But this is kind of a new concept for the franchise. There weren't many mentions or examples of homemade firearms inside of the series before Fallout 4. Where did this whole idea stem from? Are there any implications inside the Fallout lore for pipe weapons? And are the frequency that pipe weapons are found in the game really realistic for a post-apocalypse scenario? The interesting thing about the implication of pipe weapons is that Bethesda did actually provide us with a little bit of lore surrounding their use inside of the Fallout universe. But there is a small problem with the frequency of pipe weapons in the game, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But for now, I want to talk about some of the information that we received about pipe weapons inside of the game and during the development of Fallout 4. So there's this book called The Art of Fallout 4, which was published by Bethesda only a few weeks after Fallout 4's official release in 2015. This book is a great read for those who want to know a lot about the concepts, art, and ideas that were used during the creation of Fallout 4. I'll leave a link to the PDF version in the description for those of you who would like to take a look at it. Inside of this book, however, there's actually an entry on the creation of pipe weapons, alongside concept images of what modifications could be installed on the system. Aside from the images, there is a text entry on the top left that reads, quote, "We approach these designs from a point of view of a resourceful wastelander who knows nothing about guns, but is trying to make gun-like contraptions." Which, taking a look at it, I think it's honestly both a realistic and creative concept for a post-apocalyptic environment. This concept has been used before in games, such as the Metro series and Rust. For Fallout, homemade weapons make a lot of sense, considering that the availability of factory-produced firearms would drop drastically after the bombs fell, especially for groups of people without technology for arms production, such as raiders, wastelanders, etc. The only way that one of these kinds of people would be able to obtain a factory weapon would be to either find one or buy one that was created before the Great War. And even if they could find one, who knows what kind of condition it would be in after decades, if not centuries, since it was made, especially after getting nuked. I'm not going to go into details about this because of YouTube's strict policies when it comes to firearms, but assuming a factory weapon can't be found, it's not that difficult to find scrap metal and other materials to make a contraption that can act as a firearm, which may be the only choice for some of these people. While pipe weapons are a good idea from a lore perspective, like I mentioned earlier, there are some conflicting issues in-game with the frequency of and where these types of weapons can be found. Similar to Jet, pipe weapons can actually be found inside of pre-war areas, and, at least from my experience, pipe weapons are so common in the game that they can be found in almost every locked container, safe, etc. And according to you guys, I'm not alone in this statement. So the question is, could pipe weapons have existed pre-war? And if so, could they have existed in the capacity when we find them today? Well, actually, there is some lore inside of the game that proves that pipe weapons have origins pre-war, and they seem to be pretty well known by the media. In Fallout 4, we can find an issue of Guns and Bullets magazine that talks about the pipe weapons that are found on the streets of Detroit, which, again, I think makes perfect sense that pipe weapons are not only pre-war, but are discussed inside of this setting from them being used in crimes on the streets of Detroit, one of the most infamous cities. The reason why I feel this way is just because of the laws surrounding gun ownership in the United States. In the US, one of the main reasons why a person cannot legally own a firearm is if they're convicted of a felony crime, as well as a few other crimes that aren't felonies, such as domestic assault, for example. The United States has this reputation of having guns everywhere, but honestly, the stereotype is true. We statistically have more firearms in the United States than we have people, according to the Small Arms Survey. The point that I'm trying to make from all of this is, since there's so much firepower in this country, the only people, especially pre-war, that would need to resort to making improvised firearms would be these criminals, people who are not legally allowed to own firearms, hence acquiring one is significantly more difficult. So it's confirmed that pipe weapons as we know them in Fallout have origins pre-war. It makes perfect sense that we find them locked away in pre-war safes and other containers. With that being said, are the sheer number of pipe guns that we find inside of pre-war areas realistic? Well, this is where the line of black and white answers fade, and it's up to the player to draw their own conclusion. With that being said, my opinion is that yes, there are too many pipe weapons in these areas, and I'm going to use real-world statistics to explain why I feel that way. In order to have a point for comparison in real life, I wanted to see how many handmade weapons there were in the real world and find percentages of them compared to factory-made weapons to determine the likelihood of actually finding them in real life. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or the ATF, actually has a term for handmade firearms, which they refer to as privately made firearms, or PMFs. The most recent data that I could find on PMFs and their estimated count is from 2021, where the ATF predicts that there are a total of 19,344 privately made firearms in the United States. So now that we know how many handmade firearms there are estimated by the ATF, we need to know how many total firearms there were in 2021 so we can find a percentage. It was surprisingly hard to find information on this, with a lot of conflicting information online and also trying to take into consideration how many firearms might be inoperable or outdated. In the end, I decided to use the FBI's NCIS background check data to find an estimate on how many firearm transactions were in the United States in 2021. Combining all the data, it's a rough estimate that 18.8 million firearms were sold or transferred through an FFL in 2021. So, combining this data that we have, there are a total of 18.8 million firearm transactions, with an estimate of 19,344 privately made firearms, such as Fallout 4's pipe guns, existing. This means that, according to these statistics, in 2021, a grand total of 0.1% of the firearms in circulation would be handmade guns, such as pipe weapons. So what does this tell us? If we go off the data from the ATF and the FBI and say that 0.1% of total firearms are handmade, then I honestly feel like I shouldn't be finding a pipe pistol in every pre-war safe I open. Not even near that amount. I'm just using this data as an example, but if we use it on a 1-to-1 scale for Fallout just as an example, then if I open a pre-war safe, and it has a firearm in it, then there should be a 99.9% chance that it is factory made. That is a 1 in 1,000 chance of that gun that I find being a pipe pistol. So, taking everything into consideration, I personally feel like there are too many pipe weapons found inside of pre-war areas. Keep in mind, though, that the data I use refers specifically to guns in 2021, and it's supposed to be an example for context instead of an accurate reference. In reality, the number could be much higher or much lower. Now, on the other side of that same coin, the Fallout universe is set in a completely different timeline, and has a completely different set of circumstances. Just because the data I provided, for my opinion, may be accurate in 2021, it doesn't mean that it would be accurate for the Fallout universe in 2077. Just to play devil's advocate for a minute, there could be a lot of things that would change the number of homemade firearms in circulation. For example, inflation was very high before the Great War. Maybe it was just simply cheaper to make your own weapon than it was to buy one. One of my YouTube commenters also suggested that, because of the political instability of the US government at the time before the Great War, there could have been some action taken to confiscate or limit the scale of firearms in the US, resulting in American citizens creating pipe weapons due to lack of availability. I'm not going to discuss the politics on Fallout 4 inside of this video, but any one of these reasons could result in pipe weapons being more available in the Fallout universe compared to our own. Well, with all that being said, even though I'm of the opinion that there are too many pipe weapons found in the game, I honestly don't think it's a huge deal that pipe weapons are as abundant as they are, even being in pre-war areas. Is it noticeable? Sure, absolutely, but I don't feel like it's immersion breaking. Thankfully, if you share a similar viewpoint that I do, and would like to change the abundance of pipe weapons, there is a mod called Pre-War Safes that simply removes pipe weapons from the loot table in any safe that is marked pre-war. I'll leave a link to this mod in the description of this video, alongside all the other stats that I used for my opinion. Finally, I want to talk about how pipe weapons work in-game, because I honestly think the mechanics behind the different kinds of pipe weapons as well as their customization are quite interesting. Inside of Fallout 4, pipe weapons come in 3 different variants. These are the automatic pipe gun, the pipe bolt action gun, and the pipe revolver. The automatic pipe weapon being the most common, with the bolt action and revolver variants being more powerful options. As I mentioned, pipe weapons are widely available in the Commonwealth and excellent for lower level players. This is for a few reasons. The first reason is because of ammunition. The standard ammunition for automatic pipe weapons inside of Fallout 4 is the .38 caliber, which works almost identically to the .32 ammunition inside of Fallout 3. .38 is perhaps the most abundant ammo in the game, so it makes sense that it would be commonly used in a weapon type such as this one. Not too much of a punch, but the numbers more than make up for its lack of firepower. The default ammo for the pipe revolver variant is the .45 caliber, which can be found a lot early in the game, especially during the quest Unlikely Valentine, where most of the enemies are using submachine guns with .45 ammunition. Finally, the pipe bolt action variant uses .308 bullets, which even though are less frequently found than the .45 or the .38, the .308 packs a serious punch, and combined with sneak criticals can be used as one hell of a long-range weapon. I feel I should mention, there is some conflict with pipe weapons regarding the realism of calibers, and if they can actually work in real life or not, which unfortunately I can't talk about in detail without risk of this video getting demonetized by YouTube. I have to be very careful about what I say regarding firearms as a member of their partner program. I did find a video from a smaller YouTuber that goes into some detail about the mechanics of pipe weapons. However, he touched on some pretty good points, so I'll leave a link to his video in the description if you're interested in that. Moving on, another reason why I really like the pipe weapons for newer players are the customization benefits. Fallout 4 took weapon customization to the next level, with the previous games only allowing certain mods for certain weapons. Players are now able to modify and customize their weapons to a level that they were never able to before, such as upgrading or changing receivers, barrels, grips, sights, and magazines. With this being said, all the pipe weapons are quite unique in terms of customization. Do you want to turn your long pipe sniper rifle into a smaller scoped pistol? Sure, just remove the stock and use it that way. It obviously won't be as accurate, but nobody's going to stop you. Aside from that, pipe weapons are also easier to customize. For example, the automatic pipe weapons only require gun nut rank 2, which is unlocked at level 13 to access all the weapon mods. While the other weapons, such as the combat rifle for example, require gun nut rank 4 to unlock all the weapon mods, which is unlocked at almost level 40. This is a huge benefit for players who, for example, are creating sneak builds and need a suppressed rifle to use early to mid-game, while they progress through the ranks until they're able to modify or find a factory weapon with all the attachments they need, such as a combat or assault rifle. Overall, pipe guns are a great option for early to mid-game players inside of the game, albeit a bit rough around the edges inside of the lore. A creative development, a good idea, but could have been better on the implementation. And that's all I have about the pipe weapons in Fallout 4. Thank you guys for watching. The support of my channel recently from the Fallout fanbase has been astounding, and I want to thank everybody for watching, commenting, providing feedback, as well as giving me motivation to make more content. Thanks for watching again, and I hope you have a good day.